If a company decides that my humanity is 5 minutes of mouse motion, why is a $10 mouse jiggler suddenly the scandal?
Because it is deception. You are not resisting a bad rule. You are creating false evidence that you are working when you may not be working.
Both of you are trapped in a ridiculous measurement game. The company measures motion instead of value, and the worker answers machine surveillance with machine theater.
That is the part that feels humiliating. I can finish the work, take a thinking break, and still look guilty because the cursor stopped breathing.
Let us make it plain. You are home. The work laptop is open. And the monitoring software marks you inactive after 5 quiet minutes.
Those 5 minutes could be reading printed notes, thinking through a hard problem, pacing during a call, or just using the bathroom like a person. A remote workday is full of invisible labor, and the screen cannot see whether the mind is stalled, focused, or solving the hardest part of the job.
Or those 5 minutes could become 40 hidden minutes while the device shakes the mouse and the dashboard says everything is fine.
If the dashboard is that easy to fool, maybe it was never measuring work. It was measuring obedience to a silly ritual.
Price matters because it makes the whole system look cheap. A $10 object can defeat a workplace trust machine that probably cost a lot more.
That does not make the lie better. If the rule is wrong, challenge the rule. Do not manufacture fake presence and call it dignity.
Challenging the rule sounds brave until you remember who can afford to be brave. The anxious employee chooses survival before philosophical purity.
So the fight begins with a toy. But the real issue is whether remote labor is judged by output, availability, or visible submission. That choice matters because a weak metric does not only judge people badly, it also invites people to perform for the metric instead of doing the work honestly.
I'm not selling stolen hours. I'm saying that if my work is delivered, the company has no moral right to demand continuous cursor performance. The whole bargain should be that I produce responsible work, not that I keep a small plastic object in motion like a factory lever.
But employment is not only a delivery receipt. You are paid for availability, responsiveness, and truthful status during the workday.
Truthful status became a trap when the company defined truth as twitching plastic. That is not honesty. That is a superstition with software.
You keep attacking the metric, but the jiggler still creates a false record. Bad measurement does not give you permission to falsify evidence.
Notice the absurdity. One side worships a motion graph. The other side builds a tiny robot to flatter the graph. Nobody is talking about the actual work yet.
The actual work often includes silence. Hard thinking looks inactive. Reading looks inactive. Careful judgment looks inactive. Surveillance punishes the least theatrical parts of knowledge work. A person can look still because the work is finally happening inside their head, and that is exactly the part of knowledge work that surveillance flattens.
And remote trust is already fragile. If managers discover people using devices to fake activity, every honest worker may face more surveillance afterward.
Let's stop building trust on a number that confuses movement with contribution. Ask for outcomes, deadlines, documentation, and response windows instead. The company should be able to say what it needs from me without pretending that every quiet minute is a confession of laziness.
United States regulators and labor officials have been paying attention to electronic monitoring because it can chill worker rights and intensify management control.
That concern is real, but it does not erase the basic agreement that you should not send false activity data to your employer.
What if the employer sends false respect first? It says we trust you while installing a system that treats stillness like theft.
So any disrespect authorizes deception. That path turns every workplace into private revenge disguised as fairness.
No, but it authorizes refusal to let a broken metric govern my body. A mouse jiggler is crude, but so is the metric it mocks. That does not make the gadget noble, but it explains why the gadget feels like a tiny answer to a giant insult.
This is why the object feels funny and serious at once. It is cheap civil disobedience if the system is illegitimate, and cheap fraud if the contract still holds.
The worker who actually disappears all afternoon hides behind the same story. They also say the system is dehumanizing while someone else answers the urgent message.
And the worker doing deep work hides from the same dashboard because the dashboard cannot tell thinking from absence. That is the cruelty of the design.
So the system creates two false positives. It can accuse real work of laziness, and it can let fake motion imitate effort.
That is exactly why the answer cannot be secret gadgets. The answer has to be better evidence and clearer expectations. A sane system would not need either error because it would compare commitments, handoffs, response windows, and finished work instead of counting nervous motion.
Better expectations sound good, but many workers meet managers who prefer dashboards because dashboards let them manage fear without learning the work. It gives them the comfort of control without the difficult work of knowing what each person is actually responsible for delivering.
And many managers meet workers who promise results while vanishing when collaboration is needed. Trust has been damaged from both directions.
That is the central design problem. If the job is collaborative, pure output is not enough. If the job is cognitive, pure activity is nonsense. That is why any honest answer has to protect focused silence and shared responsiveness at the same time.
Then measure the things that matter. Did I answer within the agreed window? Did I meet the deadline? Did I document the handoff? Did the work hold up?
And if you fail those things while the jiggler keeps you green, should the company treat that as misconduct?
Yes. If the work fails and the device hides it, that is deception with harm. My argument is against motion worship, not against accountability.
That distinction matters. The jiggler's protest is one story. The jiggler's cover for non-work is another story entirely.
A humane policy would say this clearly. No fake activity records, no motion as a performance proxy, and no discipline from raw activity data without context. Those rules would also protect managers from pretending that the dashboard is a moral instrument when it is only a narrow sensor.
That would remove the need for the little machine. If stillness is not treated as guilt, I do not need a machine to perform innocence.
And if all status is named as misconduct, workers know the line. They can challenge surveillance without secretly forging the record.
Amazing how clarity does more work than a panicked dashboard that thinks the bathroom is a productivity collapse.
But until clarity exists, the worker still faces a daily humiliation. Every pause becomes a small accusation.
And every fake signal becomes a small betrayal. It tells the employer and the team that your visible status cannot be trusted.
So the practical move is not to romanticize the gadget, it is to document output, ask for the activity rule in writing, and challenge discipline based only on motion. That path is slower than buying a device, but it makes the argument harder to dismiss as simple cheating.
That way, the worker stops fighting the dashboard with a toy and starts forcing the workplace to explain what it actually values.
And the worker keeps their own integrity intact. That matters because a bad system becomes stronger when it can point to your lie.
The deeper rebellion is not making the mouse move. It is refusing the premise that a living worker should be reduced to a moving dot. The worker is a person with judgment, interruptions, concentration, and limits, not a dot that has to keep dancing to stay believable.
So if someone asks you today whether to buy the $10 device, what do you tell them?
I tell them the anger is valid, but the device is a risky shortcut. It may expose the stupidity of the metric while also handing management a clean misconduct story. The shortcut may feel satisfying in private, but once it is discovered, the whole argument about dignity can be reduced to one embarrassing object.
I tell them not to fake the record. Fight surveillance with policy, documentation, and collective pressure. Not a secret machine under the desk.
And I tell the company that if your management system can be defeated by a toy, maybe the toy is not the first thing you should investigate. A serious manager should ask why the official metric produced a marketplace for little machines that imitate life.
The worker should not have to animate a cursor to prove they are alive. That is the moral insult underneath the technical trick.
The worker should not answer insult with fraud. That is the ethical cliff underneath the satisfying joke.
So is a mouse jiggler rebellion resistance, fraud, or a tiny mirror showing how little trust survived remote work? The answer depends on whether the workplace is willing to replace suspicion with evidence that actually describes work.